Life with Liz, 1 hour at a time, bringing you lively, witty, and insightful discussion on family life stages, choices, and challenges, as well as current issues and events. All of Liz's discussion is rooted in her life experience as a businesswoman, wife, and mother, having lived and raised her family internationally. Life with Liz, 1 hour at a time. And now your host, Liz Gavert.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America.
All right. Good morning, you all. This is Liz, Life with Liz, here on WSMN 1590 AM, 95.3 FM. I want to welcome you to, Wednesday morning. And that is, oh, Lord have mercy, that is Karen Waldrop. I love her to pieces. She's been on with me. And, man, I tell you, look her up. I think she's at KarenWaldrop.com. She's awesome. I mean, just an awesome person, patriot, and obviously singer. So, again, welcome. Before I get started here and introduce my in-studio guest, I want to say a couple things. Okay, y'all know, because she comes on with me monthly, Barbara from Harlem. All right, yes, Miss Jasmine. And without you, Miss Jasmine, I would be nothing. Okay, and so she got home. She was here over the weekend, Independence Day weekend. She got home back to New York, or Harlem, right? And because her name is Barbara from Harlem, and I should be showing her book. I will promote her at every turn. And so she gets home. She has a new kitten somewhere hanging out around her place. Guess what she named it? And she asked me if it was okay. She named it Ms. Liz. Miss Liz. And I'm like, Barbara, are you kidding? She goes, no, she is adorable, just like you. So Barbara from Harlem, whose book is Escaping the Racism of Low Expectations. I love you to pieces. Thank you. I hope this kitten grows up into a very strong cat. So anyway, all right, so moving ahead, I got to do something real quickly here. This Facebook post, I want y'all to hear, okay? I'm not going to give the name of the writer, the author, but I'm just going to read it. This guy says, for sale. I'm selling my white privilege card. It's over 80 years old, but it is in mint condition. It has never been used, not even one time. Reason for selling is that it hasn't done a damn thing for me. No free college, no free food, no free housing, and no free anything. I actually had to go to work every day of my life while paying a boatload of taxes to carry those who chose not to work. If you're interested, I prefer cash, but would be willing to do an even trade for a race card, which seems much more widely accepted and comes with countless benefits if you fit the profile. Interested? Call me on my non-Obama cell phone that I pay for every month. Serious buyers only. Okay, isn't that good? Oh, I love that. All right, I'm sticking to my script today, which doesn't happen much. And so let's get rocking here, because let me see if there's anything else. Oh, yeah, I got to thank people. I forget to thank people. And this is my last day of the week, so I want to thank, it was a short week. I didn't do anything live Monday. I want to thank my two Patriot friends from yesterday. They are both veterans. They are Vietnam veterans. And I love you both to pieces, Rick Jansen and Bob Jones. So thank you for joining me yesterday. Now, moving ahead. Finally. That's not that long. Mr. Kenn Quinn is in studio with me right now. Now, Mr. Kenn Quinn is Northeast Regional Director for U.S. Term Limits.
Good morning,
Welcome.
Liz. Good morning. How are you? Hi, Jasmine.
All right. Okay, so Ken, I think a good place to start, well, with you, is I'm going to let you introduce yourself just a tad bit further, if that's all right. And then I'm going to play a quick, or should we do it the other way around? You know what? I'm off script. Are you okay with this? It's
Go
Life
for
with
it.
Liz.
Go for it.
Okay. All right. So we're going to introduce Mr. Kenn Quinn with this short audio video that y'all must hear, okay? Because this will get you rocking, and it will get Kenn Quinn and I rocking. All right? So let's rock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senators, for providing me an opportunity to address this important issue. I want you to imagine for a moment that you are an employer.
Real quickly, I want to tell y'all, sorry about that, who this guy is. That would be really smart, wouldn't it? So his name is Nick
Tumblety. She's the Executive Director for U.S. Term Limits.
Okay. I'm looking at that last name, and I'm not even going to try. So seriously. And so he is speaking to, it's not a joint session. It's just to set the Senate, is it not?
No, this is actually a subcommittee
Okay.
of the Judiciary Committee in the U.S. Senate. And this,
Okay.
I believe, was 2018.
Okay.
And this is the first time we've actually had a hearing on term limits, I think, in 20 years.
Okay.
So this was really a great move and step in the right direction.
Yeah, and so he's talking about Senate Joint Resolution 1 at that time. Okay, now we're ready.
They promised they would do exactly what you asked of them. But once they got the job, they became a nightmare. They stopped listening to you and started using the job to line their own pockets. They took the company credit card and racked up more debt than you could afford to pay back. They became so obsessed with keeping their jobs that they forgot to do their jobs. And after all that failure, all that disappointment, and all that incompetence, your employees came to you and said, "We deserve a raise." If you're a reasonable person, that should make your blood boil. And yet, that is exactly what it feels like to be an American taxpayer. The first three words in our Constitution are "we the people." It's written larger than anything else because the framers of that document, the architects of our republic, wanted to remind you at all times who's in charge. We the people. We are your employers, and you have an obligation to listen to us. So I come to you with a message from the American people. We demand term limits for members of Congress. In fact, according to the most recent national polls on the issue, 82% of Americans want term limits. That includes support from 89% of Republicans, 76% of Democrats, and 83% of independent voters. This is not a left or right issue. This is an American issue. In fact, term limits could be the only issue with support from both President Trump and former President Obama. Now, there was a time about 25 years ago when Congress was debating this. Nearly every opponent of term limits up here had the same rebuttal: experience, experience, experience. We need experience to do this job right. If only you leave your Congress member in office for decades on end, he or she will become such a policy expert that all our problems will be solved. In hindsight, that was one of the worst predictions ever. This system is broken. Congress has given us $22 trillion in debt, the longest war in American history, a broken healthcare system, a broken immigration system, a tax code written by lobbyists, an explosion of money in politics. Worst of all, too few here have the courage to address these problems because the only focus is on getting reelected. That's why it comes as no surprise that Congress has a 14% approval rating, and 60% of Americans say that they would fire every single member of Congress if they could. Congress is less popular than traffic jams, root canals, and hemorrhoids. You're beating head lice, but the lice have asked for a recount. Unfortunately, elections alone cannot fix this problem. Not because voters like you guys so much, but due to the nearly unbreakable power of incumbency. At the same time members of Congress publicly claim elections are free and fair, they secretly deploy every trick in the book to keep power. Incumbents get $9 in special interest money for every dollar that goes to a challenger. And if incumbents are having difficulty raising money, not to worry, they're allowed to send campaign-style mailers at taxpayer expense. That's to say nothing of all the free media and name recognition politicians naturally get just for being in office. The incumbent advantage creates a barrier to entry for everyday Americans without the connections to fund a campaign. it is the case for term limits. Elections may, in theory, be capable of dethroning incumbents, but that isn't how it works in the real world. Congressional incumbents have a 98% re-election rate. That probably explains why Congress looks more like a country club than a melting pot. It's predominantly made up of lawyers and politicians, and is disproportionately old, white, rich, and male. Term limits would give us a legislature that better reflects the diversity of our society. The message long-term incumbents send to young people like me seems to be, we want you just close enough to the political process to help us win, but don't get too close and take our jobs. The American people have lost confidence in this Congress, and for good reason. We routinely see abuses of power. 18 months ago, it was revealed that members of Congress were secretly using taxpayer money to settle lawsuits, some for sexual harassment. You still haven't disclosed how our money was spent and on whose behalf. So term limits is a check on arrogance, it's a check on incumbency, and it's a check on power. It's a way to restore political courage while bringing fresh faces and ideas to Washington. As Ben Franklin said, for the rulers to return among the people was not to degrade them, but to promote them. As Kanye West said, no one man should have all that power. Here's the dilemma we face. Over 80% of Americans want term limits to happen. Donald Trump and Barack Obama want it. It is being blocked purely by the self-interest of Congress. If this were a trial, you all would have to recuse yourselves because there is a colossal conflict of interest. If term limits pass, you won't stay in the limelight forever. You won't be the center of attention, and some people might even stop laughing at your jokes. You'll have to become ordinary citizens. And that is, my friends, the entire point. We're asking you to do what's right and listen to the people you represent. It's time to bring the gravy train into the station, end the reign of career politicians, and give Congress back to the people. Please support Senate Joint Resolution 1 for term limits. Thank you.
Amen, Nick.
Amen.
Huh?
Amen.
Isn't that great?
Oh, I think we're done here.
I think we're done. I have nothing to add. There's nothing to add to that.
Whatever his name is, last name, Nick, said it all, didn't he?
That was such a great testimony.
Wasn't it?
To say
And
some of that in
crystal
front of
clear.
them. Crystal clear.
Did you see, I don't know how recently you've looked at it, but did you see the face? Because they shoot the camera around a little bit. I don't know her name, but the senator from Hawaii.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. She's sitting there. I think her head's about to explode, but she's feeling embarrassed, as she should. Right? I don't know how long she's been in.
I think half the members didn't even show up to that hearing.
Oh,
I'm pretty sure Kamala Harris was on that committee at the time, and she
did
wasn't
not
there.
show.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but
Well,
it was great testimony, and I think resonates with most of your listeners out there. I bet you they're like, yes, right?
I think so. I think so. Because most of our listeners, I think, a good 82%, or if not more now, know what term limits is. They know what that means. Oh, yeah. But Mr. Kenn Quinn of termlimits.com. Yeah, that's where we find you, is termlimits.com. You are Northeast Regional Director for U.S. Term Limits. Okay, so tell us, in a nutshell, what do we mean by term limits? And historically, what's been going on, and why isn't it, here's a good one, from me. It's not a good one. I'm going to make it a good one. Why isn't it in the Constitution, except for the President of the United States?
Okay, well, what they are, term limits, just limiting the amount of time somebody can hold a seat. That's simply all it is. Mm-hmm. And what we are trying to advance is to have. Now, listen, you're right. It's in the Constitution for the president, and that was the 22nd Amendment that was ratified in 1951. And most people understand term limits. Most people want term limits. We have term limits at city councils, school boards, governorships around the country, state legislatures. Currently, there's 15 state legislatures that have term limits.
And 36 governors.
36 governors. Yep. The President of the United States. We even have term limits on military 4-star generals. So it only makes sense that we limit how long an individual can hold a seat in the U.S. Senate and the U.S. Congress, the U.S. House of Representatives, and that is what we're working on. This is something, as you mentioned, 82% of the American people back in, that was a poll taken in 2018, I believe. So I bet that number is...
I bet it's higher now.
It's even higher now. And what's great about this issue, this is not a partisan issue. Republicans, Democrats, progressives, conservatives, independents, green, across the board, this is an issue that we can all agree on. And I can't think of another issue in the country today that has that much support across the party spectrum. And so that's what we need to get done. Now, I don't have a lot of faith that it's going to get done by Congress, and we'll get into more details about that.
Gee, why not? Why not? I mean, Nick, but without trying to say his name, a couple of years ago, 3 years ago now, I'm guessing, what happened to this House resolution or joint resolution, Senate joint resolution? What happened to it?
You just witnessed what happened to it. We had a hearing. And that's it.
That's it.
It
goes nowhere else, or went nowhere else.
It goes where most good ideas in Congress go, on the desk with all the other documents and reforms. They go nowhere. And that's the problem. We're expecting and hoping and wishing and praying that Congress is going to do the right thing. And we continually are failed by the members of Congress. And that's what we're trying to change. That was a point that Nick made in this testimony. We need new people with fresh ideas. And when they go down to Washington, D.C., knowing they have a limited amount of time that they're going to be there, they will be more prone and they'll have the resolve to get the job done that the voters sent them down there to do. Right now, listen, I'm not saying everyone's corrupt. What I am saying is, though, you cannot change human nature. And when people are presented with a opportunity to gain a lot of power in a very short amount of time, and on top of that, a lot of wealth, that gets pretty comfortable. And unfortunately, because of human nature, it can really change somebody's, initial incentives for why they're there. And that's what we need to change. We need to actually change the structure of this government, because you can't vote out human nature at the ballot box, correct?
Right.
And so we need to change the very structure where people are not there for decades, because I think the average tenure is about 10 years. It doesn't sound like a lot, right?
Wow.
But that's not the ones that hold the power. The ones that are making the decisions have been there 30, 40, 50 years. They're the ones that are preventing a lot of these good reforms from going anywhere, because they're too afraid to make the tough decisions, because they don't want to lose that power.
Well, and I agree, but they're all about the power and the money at that point. They are, and I think I saw this somewhere on y'all's site, which is a great site, by the way. So much information there at termlimits.com. But they are essentially a ruling class. I don't know where I saw that, if it was on your site or not, but that's what you said. They roll over on average every 10 years, right? But those folks that have been in there 34, and in this state, by the way, Senator Jeanne Shaheen, I don't know the numbers, she's been in there forever.
Oh, she's a rookie, though, compared to many of them. She's still a newbie.
What? Jeanne Shaheen?
20 years?
30?
I don't think she's been there 20 years yet.
Okay, she's a rookie. Oh, excuse me. I've been here 5-6 years, so, to me, it may as well be. Yeah. So, but, they are really, truly a ruling class on either side.
Oh, absolutely. Both
right?
sides. And you've got to be there 20 years before you can even get those key chairmanships.
That's right.
Exactly. So that's the golden ring for them. And they hang in there to get that key position. And the key positions are not based on how great of a job you're doing in Congress. It's how much money have you raised for the party, for the re-election campaigns, for individual, and how much money have you raised yourself. They have two buildings, both parties, off of the federal land or whatever the campus. It's a boiler room where they go and they're dialing for dollars. That's why you don't see them in the chamber during C-SPAN debates, because they're raising money, and they have they've got their names on the sheet on the wall, and you can see this on 60 Minutes. They did a great expose on it.
I was there. I had no earthly idea that this was, they spend, I don't know what percentage of their time.
40 to 70%.
What?
40 to 70% of their time is raising money.
For money. So for their next campaign.
And for the parties. Correct.
That is sick. That is sick stuff.
And they call it paying your dues. And so that's how they get these key chairmanships is, well, you haven't paid your dues. And so that's the racket we're dealing with, and that's what we've got to change.
Oh, Lord have mercy. Okay. Yes.
It's frustrating, isn't it?
Jasmine, yeah, she's
Can I have
much
one of
younger
those?
than you. Yeah, I know. We'll share. There
right,
you
there.
go, mister. Okay. So, holy smokes. Yeah, so there is, term limits are essential. And so, circling back just a tad bit, okay, if that's okay, sure. Ken, there has been, the push for term limits has been going on for a while in varying capacities and degrees. So back in, and you give me some history, give us some history about this, because it was rolling pretty well.
Okay, yeah, so I want to get back to your first question about why didn't they put it in the Constitution?
Oh, forgot that one.
Okay,
yeah.
Great question. They actually debated this a number of times, I think like 6 days throughout that summer. Back then they called it rotation of office. And unfortunately, they didn't add it to the Constitution. They debated it. Some were adamantly for it. Others, it's not a big deal. Our first Constitution did have term limits. The Articles of Confederation had what was called rotation of office. And unfortunately, at our second one, they removed that. And there's a great letter that Thomas Jefferson, he wrote to James Madison. He was not involved in drafting the Constitution. He was over, I think, in France. So he got a copy of the Constitution, and he wrote a letter to Madison saying, hey, there's some things I like. There's 2 things I hate about it. Number 1, you did not add a Bill of Rights. And we know that was a key stickler with the Anti-Federalists, and we got that pretty quickly after it was ratified. The second thing is he really disliked was you did not include rotation of office, especially for the president. So those 2 things Jefferson really was upset about. And we got them both. We got Bill of Rights. We got it on the presidents, but he also wanted to see it on especially the senators. And so unfortunately, I don't know why some of those guys just didn't fight hard enough for it. But anyway, long story short is a lot of our states, their first constitutions had rotation of office in it. This was a foundational principle. And the reason the framers saw this and the founders viewed limiting somebody's time in office as a way to prevent tyranny. That's how they viewed it. That's how I view it. And so what happened was, we got the 22nd Amendment in 1951. We've had promises after promises. I think term limits have been introduced in Congress over 400 times. Never goes anywhere, okay? Wow. Never goes anywhere. And so the only way we're going to get this done is
I wonder why, by the way. But,
they're not going to limit their own power,
no,
right?
They're not.
And so back in the 90s, the Republicans, when they ran on the Contract for America, they had term limits for Congress in that platform. And unfortunately, when they got in Congress, it didn't go anywhere. The vote splitted, and they ended up not passing an amendment. You need 2/3 of Congress to propose an amendment. And what happened was the wind just came out of that sail for this issue. And there's only 2 ways that this can be accomplished. And I'll give you a little bit more history. Back in the same time frame, in the 1990s, the states started passing laws to put term limits on their own congressional delegations. New Hampshire was one of those states. Okay. 23 states passed laws putting term limits on their members of Congress. Most of those were done by the people at the ballot box. The only 2 states that were done by the legislature was New Hampshire and Utah. Okay, so the people wanted this. They passed laws, and in 1995, the case, it got challenged. It went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. The case was against us, U.S. term limits versus Thornton. And what happened, long story short, is the U.S. Supreme Court ruled the only way this can be accomplished is under the amending provision of the U.S. Constitution with an amendment. Now, Article 5 is that amending provision. There's only 2 ways an amendment can be proposed. Either 2/3 of both houses of Congress need to basically pass the amendment and then send it out to the states for ratification, and then it requires 3/4, or today that would be 38 states to ratify. Now, what are the chances of them doing that right now? Do you think they're going to do that right now? 2/3 going to limit their own? No, it's not going to happen, right? Nope. So the framers, in their wisdom, because they understood human nature, they provided an alternative method of proposing amendments. And the reason they put this in the Constitution was because our government, our founding document, and the Constitution, it's all about checks and balances. They needed they knew that the government they were creating would become tyrannical. And so the states needed a check against that power. And so they gave equal authority to the state legislatures to propose amendments along with Congress. So there's two methods. What we do have an amendment currently in Congress. It's SJR 3, HJR 12, which is a term limit amendment for the members of the U.S. House and Senate. But we're also trying to advance this by getting the state legislatures to meet to draft an amendment themselves and then send it out for ratification. And so the amendment in Congress is very specific. 2 terms for a member of the U.S. Senate, so that would be a total of 12 years, and 3 terms for a member of the U.S. House of Representatives for 6 years. So technically, one person could serve in Congress 18 years. The other initiative through the state legislatures, we did not get that defined with the amendment. We left the number of terms out of our resolution. We just want the state legislatures to meet, to hash it out, draft an amendment, vote on that amendment, and then send it out to the states for ratification. Because if we hope and pray that Congress is going to do this to themselves, it's just not going to happen. That's why we got to get this done by this now. More than likely, what will happen is as we get close to that trigger of 34 states, which is what we need to get to have this convention, Congress is going to get a little nervous. And they're probably going to say, you know what, guys, we probably should propose this instead of letting the states do it to us. And so I could see them ultimately doing it, but only if they feel threatened by the states.
Okay. So what's in Congress right now in terms of a potential amendment is specific to term limits. Is that correct?
Oh, it's our term limit amendment. Yes, Senator Ted Cruz is our sponsor, and Ralph Norman in the House.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And so, but relative to the states, right, and the Convention of States movement, right, it's not just term limits, right, that they are focusing on.
Well, now... So how this process, if you read Article 5, the second option that I was referring to is called a Convention for Proposing Amendments.
Okay.
And what's required, now there's a few groups out there trying to use this option.
Yes.
But for different things. So you mentioned Convention of States. That's what the term is called because the states are convening together. That's a convention of states.
Okay.
There's an effort out there seeking to have an Article 5 convention to propose a balanced budget amendment.
Yes.
Just that one amendment alone, okay?
Right.
There's a group out there trying to hold a convention for a campaign finance reform amendment. Just one amendment. The organization that you, I think, are referring to, Convention of States Project, they're seeking a convention for 3 different subjects, term limits being one of them.
Yep.
And then our organization is seeking an Article 5 convention simply for congressional term limit amendments. So how this process works is it's not an open convention. It's not a constitutional convention, which a lot of the opponents out there like to lie about the process. You cannot rewrite the Constitution.
Right. I'm going to get to the liars, by the way. But anyway.
So this is very specific.
Yeah.
So it's equal to Congress. So Congress, you need 2/3 to pass an amendment. In the other option, you need 2/3 of the legislatures to apply for the same topic in order to even meet.
Now I got it. Okay.
Yeah, so
now
it's
I
limited
understand.
to that application process.
But so you have various organizations working very diligently for their cause. But you and others organizations are working, let's just use term limits because that's who you are, all right? Does it work? I'm just saying, instead of pulling, does it work independently well like that? Does that make any sense? So you have these different organizations, different folks with the same passion, right, for term limits, but they're going about it. Does it make any sense to pull together?
Well, we have different goals, right?
Yeah.
So our goal, our organization is all we're seeking is a congressional term limits amendment.
Okay.
And the reason for that is in order for an amendment to even get proposed and then ratified, what's required? You need supermajority support of the American people.
That's right.
And what issue out there today, other than term limits for Congress, has that level of support? I can't think of any.
It's term limits. That's it.
And the other thing is, in order to get to this end game, it can't be a Republican issue. It can't be a Democrat issue. It has to be across the political spectrum. So it has to be a nonpartisan issue that both sides can come together and agree on. Okay. And so this is the effort of U.S. term limits, and that's why we feel this is going to ultimately get there. It's a heavy lift.
Yeah.
It's going to take time, but we've got to get there. I want to get there all the way to a convention. I don't want those rascals ended up drafting their amendment and then sending it out. My fantasy would be to have them freak out Congress, propose an amendment, and then the states still get to the convention and propose theirs, and we have a dueling.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Wouldn't that be great to see two different amendments getting ratified?
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, I understand. All right. So, all right, the term limits then that you're looking for. Let me think of what. Okay, there are organizations and people that are fighting against, let's say, the term limits amendment, right? And one of them, I had never heard of them before, is called the John Birch Society. They look to be, I went there because they were new to me. They look pretty good in a lot of ways. I mean, they work very hard on various missions, like saving our children. I'm not sure what that, restore election integrity, countering COVID-19 overreach, stop the globalist trade agenda. Let's see, get us out of the UN, get us out of the USMCA. Article 6. Not Article 5. So they are fighting very hard against, the Convention of States, and I presume they're fighting against you all as well.
Well, there's groups on both sides of the aisle against this process.
Okay,
so you
why?
have groups on the left and on the right trying to prevent the state legislatures from using their constitutional authority because they want to maintain the status quo. They like the way things are, and you will see a lot of these groups will use the fear of an Article 5 convention as a way to raise money. Okay, so they work that angle out as well. Now, you mentioned the John Birch Society. I think I might have mentioned to you, I used to buy into their information. When this whole idea of an Article 5 convention, when I came across it back in 2013 or so, I was getting information from that group and was like, whoa, we can never do this. We're going to lose the Constitution and it's too much of a risk. Well, what happened was once I started doing my own research and I started imagining this, reading what the framers said about it. I went and I read Madison's notes. I read the Federalist Papers. I read the debates in Congress immediately after the Constitution was ratified. Over and over again, they understood that the Article 5 convention was a tool given to the state legislatures to propose a single amendment. It's for one amendment. That's the whole. It simply allows the state legislatures to do what Congress has done over 12,000 times. Congress has introduced over 12,000 amendments to the U.S. Constitution since 1789. The states have introduced 0. So all this opportunity does is give the states that same opportunity. Now, it's funny you mentioned the John Birch Society. Back in the 60s and 70s, the John Birch Society one of their top goals was to call an Article 5 convention to propose a very good amendment. It was called the Liberty Amendment. It wasn't Mark Levin's book, Liberty Amendments, but it was a specific amendment, had 4 sections to it, and had that amendment been ratified in the late 70s, we probably wouldn't be in the mess we're in today. Unfortunately, that organization flipped on this issue and they started opposing the Article 5 process back in the late 70s. The earliest I was able to find in my research was their opposition to the states proposing a right to life amendment. And ever since then, they've been adamantly opposed, and they lobby against this all around the country, along with a group like Eagle Forum, Phyllis Schlafly's organization, and then on the left you have Common Core, the Center for Budget and Policy, and then you also have Women's League of Voters. Yeah. So yeah,
and what they'll tell you is that the convention will run away. That they will destroy
Yeah,
our
and it's complete
Constitution.
nonsense.
Right.
They don't understand our history. They claim that the 1787, the Philadelphia Convention, was a runaway convention.
Right.
And they lie about the history. That convention was not called for the sole purpose of revising the Articles of Confederation. It was called to devise such further provisions necessary to render the Constitution of the United States adequate to the exigencies of the Union. It was a full, open scope. Whatever is needed to save the Union. They were sent there not to preserve the Articles of Confederation. They were sent there to preserve the Union. And that's what they did by drafting. Heck, when they showed up on day one, there was a whole Constitution presented. Virginia offered the Virginia Plan, which was 15 resolutions. They knew why they were there, to fix this mess, because the Articles was weak. It was not performing the way our country needed it back then. And so they fulfilled their duty, their commissions, their role, and it was not a runaway. And all 13 states ratified the Constitution. All the legislatures approved the ratification process. And so there's a lot of misinformation that they spread about that history that makes people think, oh, they exceeded their authority.
Yeah, but you have very intelligent people, and I know some, that believe this, right? That have been sucked in to this narrative that, it's going to run away, that they're going to destroy our constitutional republic. There is a risk. There is a risk of that. So it's a no-go in my mind, is what folks will say.
I know. And it's completely, they
Why would the framers have put something
That's a great, right?
Would they have put something like this in? These guys, I mean, holy smokes, geniuses. Yeah, old white geniuses. I don't think they were all old, but they were at that time all white. And we'll go back to my Facebook post, there. But it was what it was. And these guys knew what they were doing. Look where we are.
Yeah, this is what federalism is all about.
That's right.
We have a national government that has enumerated powers, but those powers are limited.
That's right.
The other powers belong to the states, and that's unlimited. And if you are a believer in federalism and the states and having their authority, I don't see how you can oppose this, because this is the ultimate tool the framers gave to the state legislatures to check the power of a runaway federal government. Federalist 85, Alexander Hamilton was specifically clear as he closed out the whole Federalist argument that, hey, Article 5, the convention is how the states will protect our securities and our liberties. And unfortunately, a lot of good people, intelligent people, have fallen for the lies about this. And, John Dickinson, a great quote from him back at the convention in 1787, he said, experience must be our only guide. Reason may mislead us. Well, today I say experience must be our only guide. Fear may paralyze us. And that's what I'm afraid has happened to a lot of good legislators. They're fearful of their own authority, and it's paralyzing our nation.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. So I've got Kenn Quinn here. He is New England Regional Director for U.S. Term Limits. You can learn all about this amazing organization. Lots of great information there, by the way, Ken. Great website. If you even want to learn about our Constitution, specifically to term limits and more, you can go there. But you can find that at termlimits.com. So, Ken, what is it that your organization, is actively doing, other than you coming and driving a long way to sit here, which I thank you for that, by the way. But and what can folks do to help?
Yeah, thanks, Liz. Yeah, so we're actively trying to get the states to pass these resolutions. I cover, 16 states right now. I'm heading out to Wisconsin tomorrow. And so we have a number of state legislatures that are still active in this session. We're trying to get this passed. We just passed completely in West Virginia a few weeks ago.
Oh, awesome.
So we have 4 regional directors. So I'm one of 4, and we are trying to get this done at the state level. And we need people to get involved. Here in New Hampshire, if you're listening to this, get involved, sign our petition. Just go to termlimits.com, sign our petition. That's how I will be able to communicate with you through our emails. We use that when we do calls to action. We need people putting pressure on their state senators and legislators so that they will hear from their constituents to get behind this. We also have a pledge drive. We want all candidates for office to sign our pledge that they will support this. And so if anyone's listening and want to get involved, email me, kquinn@termlimits.com. I want to talk to you. There's no reason we can't get this done in New Hampshire, to be honest with you.
Of all states.
Of all the states.
Yes.
Because New Hampshire, I love the history of New Hampshire. You've had the most conventions. Now, I'm talking about state constitutions now. Okay. New Hampshire has had 17 state constitutional conventions. 2 of those were called to adopt a new constitution. 15 were called to propose amendments to the constitution. So you have a rich history. The last one was 1984. You have proposed and ratified several hundred amendments to your own constitution. So New Hampshire should be leading the charge with this effort. Don't you think?
Don't you think? And so is there a team? Sorry, here in New Hampshire. I mean, you're a big dog. I mean, hey, you're kind of a big dog, 16 states. I mean, holy smokes. Anyway.
We're working on building a team, and that's how we need to do this. I live
right.
in Maine, and I can help. And so we're looking for a volunteer grassroots team to organize and help us with this effort. And that's why if you go to our page, you can volunteer. There's a tab up top to get involved through volunteering, and that's how I'll be able to know that you kind of raised your hand. I want to do more. That's what we're looking for.
Do you have any New Hampshireites or whatever?
We do, but we're constantly trying to grow it more.
Of course.
We didn't introduce this year. We took a year off to kind of rebuild, and I got focused on some of the other states, but we're looking to hit the next session pretty hard.
Man, I mean, this is supposed to be apolitical, not, it's an American issue, but we know how that rolls sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But hey, Ken, I wanted to ask you something real quickly that I missed. And direct me here. So you, in our offline conversation, you had told me that you could compare a constitutional convention to something that goes on every year here in the United States of America that is constructed, that looks like and functions very similarly to a constitutional convention. So can you share that?
Absolutely, yeah. So a constitutional convention, so there's 2 things. You have a constitutional convention to adopt a new constitution. Then you have a convention for proposing amendments, which is what Article 5 is. So those are 2 separate. So you mentioned so this is fascinating history, and I came across this a few years ago. In fact, I'm going to be attending this. Well, I'm going to be talking to the commissioners in Wisconsin this week. It begins Friday. This started in 1892. The states started to see the federal government was interrupting or interfering with their states' rights and their enumerated powers. And so what happened was in 1892, I believe it was in New York, the states got together in a convention. And they're like, we need to meet to deal with laws for the states so the federal government will not intervene in our authority. Ever since then, the states have been meeting in a convention. It's called the National Conference of Commissioners on Uniform State Laws. And this process, and that's why when people say, well, we don't know the rules of a convention, we don't know how it works, they're vibrant. We use them every year. And so how the process works is all 50 states participate. They appoint their commissioners either by the state legislature or the governor. When they arrive, they have their credentials or their commission, which states what they're allowed to discuss. It's a limited convention. So this year, there's only 7 topics that are being reviewed. So it's limited previously. So it's not an open convention. They meet. They break off into committees. It lasts for a week. And then what's fascinating about this is it's one state, one vote. Okay, so now this functions just like an Article 5 convention, and then whatever they pass will become what's called a model act. They've passed over 200 of these in their history. Those commissioners will then bring the model act back to their state legislature to try to get the state legislature to adopt it as a state law. And so this is a function that all the states are participating in every year. It starts in Madison, Wisconsin this Friday. I'm hoping to meet with as many of those commissioners as possible to get them to realize, hey, I need your help with Article 5. And because you guys are using the process now, can you help educate your colleagues at the legislatures to realize this is nothing to fear? And so that's great history that most people aren't aware of.
And it works.
Yeah. And many of the commissioners are state legislators themselves. And so this is how our country has always solved our problems. Before our founding and even after, the states would meet in conventions to deal with war issues, trade issues, commerce issues. Nothing's changed. And so we just got to use it today to fix what's happening in Washington. And let's start with congressional term limit amendment, right?
Yeah.
That's the way we got to do it.
That is great. I'll have to get you, maybe you can call back in. You can always drive back here. But once you attend, you are attending it, you said?
Well, it's not open to the public this year.
But you're...
I attended one in 2016,
Okay.
but I'm going to be down in the same area trying to connect with some of the commissioners.
Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that is so cool. That really just kind of, I don't know, warmed my heart, I guess, to hear that something like that is going on, right? And that it makes a difference and that people can interact and discuss certain acts, in this case, I guess is what it's called.
You might have heard like the Uniform Commercial Code. That came from this convention.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that.
Isn't that great?
Yes.
Yeah, so we know how to solve our problems.
Oh, Lord. I mean, that's awesome. Well, Mr. Kenn Quinn, this has been really fun, very interesting, and I hope you'll come back as you make your way through your 16 states. Oh, Lord have mercy. But you're just in Maine, so that's pretty easy. So how do folks find you?
Termlimits.com. And if you want to reach me directly, kquinn@termlimits.com.
Okay, super.
Thank you, Liz.
This is great. I mean, very inspirational, motivating. We need that right now,
Amen.
right? That folks can, agree on something. And this is 82% of the United States agrees about term limits, right?
It's time we the people take the power back.
Absolutely. And we got to get some of them old fogies out of there. I mean, seriously. Anyway, we'll stop there. And so, real quickly here, y'all, on Life with Liz, I want to welcome on the phone Marilyn Todd. Marilyn Todd, a lot of folks here in New Hampshire know of because not only is she a mom, a patriot, but she is founder of the New Hampshire Voter Integrity Group. And she has been just a key player in the charge here in New Hampshire to take a look at, last November's election, but, our election integrity here in New Hampshire across the board. So, hey, Marilyn, how are you this morning?
Hi, Liz. How are you?
Fantastic. Thanks for jumping in here. So much fun. I haven't talked to you in a while. But what I wanted to ask you a couple of things. How's your movement going? How did the Wyndham, real briefly, how'd the Wyndham forensic audit, wrap up?
So their audit reports are due on July 13th, and, I'm not happy at all with the auditors. I refer to it as the sham audit. Harry Hersey ended up deleting the last 4 memory cards in the state of New Hampshire, which we should have all the memory cards again, according to federal law. They're supposed to be preserved for 22 months. So now, we want the ballots released so Jovan can do an audit of those because, all 3 auditors were from Verified Voting. Stay tuned, Liz, because we have huge surprises. We're working on a movie right now that is just going to be mind-blowing on everything that has transpired in New Hampshire. It's not even our words. It's their words themselves. We have a lot of, we've been talking to some legal counselors, which hopefully that will, be very soon that we're able to, work on that. We just have so many projects. We're working with some towns to get the machines out, which I think is going to happen sooner than later. and we're cleaning up the voting rolls, which are insane.
Yes.
It like grossly overstated.
Absolutely. Well, I hope you get those machines out of Bedford, from whence I come, because they have $40,000 set aside in their budget for new machines. And I'm not sure how the people of Bedford are tolerating that, because here in, we've got 1.3 million people, but I don't know how many voters. I don't know why we don't hand count in the state.
About 800,000. There's no
800,000.
reason why it's
None.
not hand counted.
Not at all.
And I think 800,000 is overstated, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
So, according to my analysis, and this is what I, talked about last night briefly, is that 16,630 same-day registrants also voted absentee. And in New Hampshire, that just seems like a very lot. So we're going to be tracking, we're going to clean up the voting rolls. We're going to make it so the voting rolls are cleaned up every single year, not this once every 10 years. Like Nashua has me, if I wanted to, if I didn't have integrity, I would be able to vote twice, technically 3 times. I was born and raised in Nashua. They have my marriage certificate and they have my birth certificate on file, and they won't take my maiden name off the voting list, and they won't merge them. And I haven't voted with my maiden name in over 4 elections. And according to New Hampshire, if you don't vote in the last 4 elections, you're supposed to get a letter saying that, do you want to continue to be on the voting list? And if not, and if so, you have to, send that letter back. And I've never gotten one from my maiden name. And I even called them and asked them to merge the two, and they wanted me to jump through all these hoops.
That's crazy.
So,
that is absolutely crazy. And what about folks who move around?
Exactly.
Because I know that when we, came back to the U.S., so we were gone. So I voted absentee for 10 years while we were outside of the U.S. and absentee in Texas, right? So, from whence I came even before Bedford. Anyway, and so, but we land in New Hampshire, right? And I go and sign up, right? And I receive my, and this was during the primary, I think, in 2016. And I received my ballot from Texas, my absentee ballot, and then I can also vote here. But like you, I didn't do that, right? How many people, and so the more you move around too, I think we find that there are issues there as well. The issues are really, really deep. But so Marilyn, man, I'll tell you, that is very cool to hear.
So also just to avoid that, what I'm proposing to do is, I don't think the government should be tracking registrations. I think it should be an oversight committee by private citizens, right? And so what we're trying to do is we have, we've been calling it the American Freedom Tour. So the same audit that New Hampshire is doing, I want to do an audit in every state in America. So basically I'll have the registration, hopefully if I can get them, for every single state, and that way we'll be able to track all those people, and I know that I'm just going to try to do that.
It's a big undertaking, that's for sure. But you are a warrior. You absolutely are. So Marilyn, let's see, where are we? We are Wednesday, but Friday you've got an event, you and others, that you wanted to share with us, and what would that be?
Yeah, so we're going to have a birthday party for America. We need, all boots on the ground. Basically, the audit that we've been doing for New Hampshire is I sent it to Dr. Frank, and Dr. Frank is going to, he did his own audit in New Hampshire, and he's going to be releasing those findings. So this is like a mathematician, a statistician. He's a physicist. He's one of the smartest guys, very ethical. He's going to be giving his presentation. We have a stage. We have food trucks. We have ice cream trucks. We have a live band coming.
At the State House, right?
At the State House, Yep, at the State House from 3 to 7:30. Dr. Frank will be on at 5:30. It's just going to be so fun, and I really just hope that everybody attends. It's going to be rain or shine. It's looking like it might rain in the morning, but it doesn't start till 3, and we're going to have, tents if it rains. I just hope, and pray that the weather is nice to us, because this is going to be like our 4th of July.
That's
I don't know
awesome.
how
You
guys
can't have
feel,
enough 4th of July
exactly.
celebrations, Independence Day celebrations, can you, Marilyn?
Exactly.
Hey, Marilyn, thank you for joining us and filling us in on all of this. I hope that you are successful on Friday. And I would love to hear Dr. Douglas Frank myself. I think he's a fascinating person, and folks should Google him, but also find y'all. Where do we find y'all?
So we have a Telegram and a Facebook, and that's going to be New Hampshire Voter Integrity Group.
Mm-hmm.
And I can also be reached at action@nhvoterintegrity.org.
Okay.
Action. Sorry.
That's okay.
So many
we
emails.
gotta go. I'll put that out
Okay.
there. All right. Thanks, Marilyn.
All right. Thank you, Liz. Have the best day.
Hey, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, folks, that's it for us today. Mr. Kenn Quinn, thank you for joining me.
Thanks.
Yeah. And I'll be back on Monday. Until then, God bless you all.